It just gives us those choices. I think we pretty much agree. It's really interesting, that you actually said that because, I've got like exactly along the same line. I think if we're thinking it independently, I wonder if a lot of Blues fans are actually thinking
Yeah.
the same thing. So let us know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about, particularly about Scott Wright. Does he deserve his place in the starting lineup?
Welcome back to BCFC Royal Blue. And on Saturday, Birmingham City travel to Lincoln City in a game at the top of the table, with Birmingham sitting in first and Lincoln sitting in fourth. And it's going to be a really interesting contrast in styles of play, because Lincoln are traditionally sit out of possession and they've averaged 36% possession this season at the bottom of the table. And Birmingham City have averaged 68% possession at the top of that stat table as well. So it should make for a really interesting game. Both of those stats leaning towards each team's strength. But let's get into it, Dad. Birmingham City versus Lincoln City. What are your thoughts for the game on Saturday?
Well, straight away you mentioned possession there, Matt. But we've found that possession doesn't mean anything unless you score goals, does it?
Absolutely.
And we know, there's lots of teams out there that are happy to be out of possession and still score plenty of goals and still win many games. So I think it's more a way in the way in which, particularly for Birmingham City, the way that the Blues adapt or not adapt, respond to the last last game we had, which we defeated against Charlton. I'm hoping to see a bit of a reaction. I'm sure Chris Davies is. We'll get on to what we think the team selection will be a little bit later, but a little bit on Lincoln. They're in good form. They haven't lost in 7. They've won 3 and drawn 3 of their last 6. And Birmingham City, we've won 5, and obviously clearly our one loss was the last game. So both teams in reasonably good form, and that explains why we're both at the top or near the top of the table. So I think this should be a good game. They're going to be a tough nut to crack, I think, on their own pitch. So I think it's once again, we say this in all games, don't we? And I think we have to give every team the respect that they deserve. And I think this team in particular are going to be a challenge for a lot of teams at home.
And Lincoln are advancing on their season. Last season, they finished 7th last year. So they just missed out on the playoff spot by 1 position. So I think this year they're going to want to push on and really affirm themselves in that playoff position. And the reason why I referenced and started the podcast with that stat, Dad, was because how impressive is that to be 4th with an average of 36% possession? And again, we say this a lot, that it kind of reminds me of the John Eustace setup. We were used to sitting out of possession, but we still beat teams, don't we? That stat doesn't. It's not the end all or be all of a team's success. And the fact that they're bottom of the stat of that stat table, yet 4th, is showing how much of a good season Lincoln are actually having. And they kind of remind me of Wrexham a little bit, in terms of they are very well set up. They punish you when they're on the ball, but they're happy to sit off the ball and kind of pounce really and wait for you to maybe mess up, or they press high, they press. I've seen a lot of the Lincoln highlights that they press in a 4, and we're going to have to be really careful about that in Birmingham's play, because coming back to that percentage of 68% for us, we do at the start of the game especially kind of pass it around the back a little bit. And if they're pressing us high like we saw against Charlton, teams like that can cause us some problems, can't they? So we definitely have to be aware of that. I think this is going to be a tough game. And if you watched our score prediction video that went out yesterday, if Lincoln beat us, they only go 1 point behind us. So that shows how close it is up the top. It shows how well they're doing, and I'm expecting a tough game.
Yes, so am I. I mean, they play predominantly a 3-5-2 and transition sometimes to 5-3-2 out of possession. So they are quite a compact team. Let's say their midfield's very compact, which is why I think it gives them the ability to pressurise or press, because they've got a big midfield. But for us, if we can break that press, it's going to open up a lot of space for us behind them as well.
So that formation you mentioned, Dad, often actually looks like a 3-1-4-2, which is still technically a 3-5-2, but they have that centre defensive mid. And I've watched quite a bit of Lincoln over the weeks, and that centre defensive mid is someone called Ethan Erahan. Again, apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. My pronunciation on this podcast is poor. But for me personally, I'm sure Lincoln fans could challenge me on this. He's their star player. He's the one who does that, breaking up between the defence and the midfield, and then gets them on the attack as well. So for me, he's a really, really good player. But I think that's really key, because when you hear 3-5-2, you might miss that centre defensive mid when they play that one holding midfielder. And he, for me, is their standout player. He's a really, really good player.
Yeah, and they play very much on the counter attack. Obviously, that's what teams do, are comfortable out of possession do. They wait, press, win the ball, and play on the counter attack. And also as well, they attack a lot down the left hand side as well. So we're going to have to be very wary on our right, obviously their left. So obviously whoever's playing there, Taylor Gardner-Hickman or Alphonse Samstead, anybody down that right hand side is going to have to be wary of that, because that's a really good supply line for them as well. But their results, they've done well. I mean, they've as I said, they've in the last 7 games they're unbeaten. They've won 4 and drawn 3. And just to give you some of the results they've had recently, just to put into context, last game in the league they beat Leighton Orient 2-1 at home. Prior to that, they drew 1-1 at Blackpool, who were in really good form, and Lincoln scored a goal right at the end there to equalise. I think it was in injury time. Prior to that, they beat Cambridge, which, with respect, most people's teams are at the moment beating Cambridge 2-0 away. Then 2 draws prior to that: Wigan 0-0, Peterborough away 1-1, and then they beat Stevenage away. And I think, to me, the best result of their season, I think so far, is a really good 4-1 home victory against Mansfield.
That's a good win.
So and they beat Burton 3-2 away, lost home to Barnsley, which was a little bit of a surprise, really, but based upon the form of where they both are at the moment. But some good results in there, and they've clearly got the ability to keep clean sheets, and they can either score goals. They haven't really scored many goals in the last few games. I mean, they got 2 against Leighton Orient, 1 against Blackpool, 2 against Cambridge, didn't score against Wigan, scored 1 against Peterborough, 1 against Stevenage. So they're not really prolific in the last number of games in terms of goals. But then again, if you keep a clean sheet, you don't need to. You only need 1 goal.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mentioned earlier that about them being close to Wrexham, and I forgot to mention in that section, the reason why I mentioned Wrexham as well is they're very together. They're very.
I noticed that as well.
They're a very good unit. There's a sense of belief. Big players step up in big moments. They never know when they're beaten. They never give in. They have all those gritty qualities of those teams that seem to grind out results, and they're qualities that you cannot underestimate. And I like to check social media, Dad, to gauge from their fans where they are and what they're thinking. And there's a real sense of belief amongst the fan base, which actually is quite nice, because of my previous research from teams like Rotherham and even Charlton, the fan base seemed a bit beat down and a bit pessimistic. If you go onto and check out some tweets and stuff from Lincoln fans, they're very optimistic. They feel like something special's on the cards. They feel like they can, possibly make the playoffs this year. So there's genuinely like that bit of a buzz around the club, thinking they might do something a bit magical this year, which, again, that sort of thing can't be understated. And they've got a really good manager, Michael Scabala. I don't know how true this was, but there was rumours that Blues were, in that Mowbray era in the sort of January, February last year.
I think he was a name linked, but I think that was along with about 20 other names as well.
Good manager, very calm, very collected, comes across well in his interviews, and a team we have to watch out for. But for my research, Dad, there's some really good players. I mean, they have the highest player rated at Lincoln isn't just the highest rated player at Lincoln. At the minute, he's the highest rated player in the whole of the EFL League One. And again, apologies if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Feel free to correct me, Dad. It's a guy called Powdy O'Connor, and he's their centre back. He's rated 7.63 this season, and he's just a no nonsense.
Yeah,
tough as nails, centre half. He ain't taking no prisoners. He will go through you. He's got a pretty poor disciplinary record. Kind of reminds me of Mike Bassett's England manager, the psycho guy who puts his fist through the wall and stuff. Very aggressive. Stansfield's going to have to be on it this game. Definitely going to have to battle him for that level of aggression. He's a good player. And they've also got 2 good forwards as well, Freddie Draper and Jovan Makama as well. And I saw them in the Leighton Orient game. I actually watched that game. In the first half, for Lincoln City, you might as well have written that game off. First half. Second half, they were absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
And for me, Freddie Draper and Makama in that second half were great. And they definitely are 2 to watch out for. Makama is very quick. He could be a bit more clinical, but he could cause us some problems. So just a few areas there that just to be aware of, and a few players that Lincoln have that should.
And I think when you say you look at social media, it does depend at what point in time you look at social media, because you might look in a few weeks and those comments might be a bit more negative, because the Rotherham fans and the Charlton fans are on the back of poor results and poor form. Lincoln, clearly they're riding the crest of a wave, unbeaten in 7, 4th in the league. You're going to get positive comments, aren't you? So it does depend really on where you are at any point in time.
Yeah.
They have got some good players, as you mentioned. They've brought in a few players in the summer. They paid Cheltenham 130,000 for centre forward Robert Street. He's not really seemed to be featuring this much this season. Whether he's injured, maybe Lincoln fans can let us know whether he's injured or he's just not getting picked, or maybe he's not fit. But he was bought for 130,000, which is a lot of money at this level. Then the rest of them are free transfers. A right back called Tendai Darikawa from Apol Limasia, that's the Cypriot team. Tom Bayliss, he's been around a few clubs, a central midfielder from Shrewsbury. JJ McKiernan bought them from Morecambe, another central midfielder. So they bought in a few players, but they also let go a few as well. I mean, the big loss for them, I think, is Lasse Sorensen. Huddersfield bought him for 470k. He was a big player for them last season.
Good money though at this level again, 400 grand.
Yeah. Daniel Mandrio, he's gone to Shamrock Rovers. Teddy Bishop went to Colchester. Hakib Adulakun, he went to Salford. Sam Long, Bromley. So they, like all teams, there's players that go, players that come in. But their top scorer this season is a guy called Ben House, and they bought him a couple of years ago from non-league Eastleigh. Well, non-league, it's National League, as they were, Eastleigh. He's their top scorer with 3 goals. Then you've got your friend Paddy O'Connor. He's got 2 goals. Adam Jackson's got 2 goals. Freddie Draper has got 2. And Sam Ruffin has got 1. And then the assist, Tom Bayliss, who's a central midfielder, he's got 3 assists, so he'll be one to watch. Paddy O'Connor, he's got 2 assists as a centre-back. Sam Ruffin's got 2. So they've got goals. You think, well, 3 goals as a top scorer is not an awful lot, but we're only part way into the season, so that obviously
there's a good spread there across the team. I like that. I like to see other people contributing towards goals. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, they've lost some goals, and we've said this about a lot of teams when we previewed them, haven't we? But last season their top scorer was a guy called Joe Taylor. He got 10 goals. He was their leading scorer. He was on loan from Luton. He's gone back. Daniel Mandrio, he's been sold. He got 8 goals. He's the one that's gone to Shamrock Rovers. Rico Hackett got 7 goals. Lasse Sorensen, he's the one that went to Huddersfield. He's got 6 goals. He's gone. Teddy Bishop got 4 goals. He's gone. Hakib Adulum, he got sold here, so he's got 4 goals. So they've lost a lot of goals, but it doesn't really matter if you're a team that is good defensively. You don't need to be prolific goal scorers if you can keep clean sheets and restrict the opposition.
They're also very good from set pieces. They've scored 7 goals from set pieces this season alone. Yeah. They've scored 5 from open play, but for me the key was that 7 from set pieces. In fact, they're only 1 goal behind Blackpool, who are on 8 from set pieces. So they're the second strongest team in League One from set pieces. And that if you look at the Peterborough game, if you look at the Wrexham game, we have conceded a couple of goals from corners there. We need to be really careful from our set pieces. Yeah. And just last thing for me on Lincoln, and we'll move on to Blues, Dad, and that's just, I had it wasn't a heat map, but it was a percentage map of the balls that they play and where they play. 40% of their play comes from the left-hand side, 24% goes through the middle, and 36% goes through the right. So that is a very predominantly left-sided strong team, which, again, I think you referenced that earlier in the podcast, Dad. Gardner Hickman and whoever's on the right side with him is going to have to be careful of that. They're going to come down their left quite a lot. And they're good at counter-attacks. They when they're on the ball, they make it count. And this is really key. Blues pass the ball a lot, and we are getting better at creating chances. We are going at teams a little bit more. But when they get the ball, a bit like a Wrexham, they will punish you when they do get the ball at their feet. So something to be wary of. They can be good at counter-attacks. However, they're also weak to defend against counter-attacks if you can get through and break those lines quickly. So fair enough, they can press us all they like. If we can get through that press quickly and break it a couple of times early, I think we'll be fine. But always a tough a task to ask, is it, to break those first few attempts at the press.
Yeah, and it is all about us, really. I mean, we can obviously preview these teams and obviously look at them because it's interesting to see the way they play. But if we're on our A game, we're going to be tough for any team to play, but we've got to be there. Just one final point on Lincoln, which I find really interesting. I don't remember seeing this before. When you preview teams, I always look at their record last season, and they've got an identical home record to away record. So last season in League One, they'd played 23 games, obviously away, 23 at home, and in both cases they won 10, drawn 7, and lost 6 home and away.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
That's really rare, isn't it?
Yeah. The goals home they scored 36 and conceded 17. Away they scored 29, conceded 23. So they had a good positive 20 plus, 25
good,
plus goal difference. But I find that strange. So they are vulnerable to losing at home. Mm-hmm. Clearly, you can actually see that as well. But again, maybe something, if we can play to our A game. We should win this game, but you can't discount because these are a good team. They're in 4th place, and these are the type of teams for Birmingham City that if we win them, then we're pulling away from good, strong teams, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really important.
You've got to beat the teams around you. That's how you get promoted.
And it's a really important game for both teams. So do you want to fancy going on to the Blues and having a chat about what we think the the team will be.
Let's do it then. Should we do what we always do, Dad, and start goalkeeper and make our way up the pitch, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we might see from the Blues this weekend.
Yeah, I've also as well for the first time given me an idea what the subs will be.
Same.
Have you as well?
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah. I mean, there's a few variables because there's is Iwata injured? You know, there's a few things we don't know yet, but let's discuss that now, and then we'll make sense of it as we go.
Okay, yeah.
So goalkeeper, Dad, let's kick off.
Well, it's going to be Allsop because, as far as I'm aware, that Bailey Peacock-Farrell was injured because he withdrew from the Northern Ireland team. I don't know what the extent of that injury is, but to me, I think it's going to be Allsop in goal.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So again, always go to the left side. I'll start that. I think it's going to be Cochrane.
It has got to be Cochrane. You know, that's the one area of the pitch at the moment until Buchanan comes back that we haven't really got any major cover. There are players that can play in that left back position, but I think Cochrane's played more game time than any player in the whole Blue squad this season.
Also, he's made that position his own.
He deserves it.
100%. I mean, fair enough. Buchanan's going to give him some rivalry when he gets back from his injury, but for me, Cochrane has made that left back space his own.
Yeah, I think he's nailed on. Unless he gets injured, that'll be his position, I think.
Definitely. So centre halves, Dad. So before we name them, it's worth noting Bielek is injured. So that obviously already causes a bit of a predicament at centre back. What are your thoughts for the two centre back positions?
Well, yeah, Bielek is injured, but Sanderson's back in the equation now. I think Clara definitely.
Yeah, Clara. I think that goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So then that means the next spot is between Ben Davies and Dion Sanderson. I think Sanderson will be on the bench for this game, just as you ease him in. So I think it'll be Ben Davies who'll start this game alongside Clara.
Okay, I mean, for me, it's a toss of a coin. I think it could be Sanderson because we saw him at Shrewsbury and he played a decent amount of the game, and he was doing some really good passages of play, weren't he? You know, he actually built on for a couple of goals with that passing out to the right and stuff. So
I'm just thinking about, it's just the fact that he's like coming back off injury and whether Chris Davies wants to ease him in. I agree with you. Shrewsbury, who is absolutely brilliant. I mean, some of the in passes he was making were fantastic.
Yeah.
So
I'll back you, Dad. I think for fitness and for longevity, I think he'll put him on the bench, and I think he'll start with Ben Davies. But I wouldn't be surprised if Sanderson is in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
So we'll go Clara and Ben Davies then.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So then, you can start off with who do you think will be at right back?
So for me, Dad, Taylor Gardner-Hickman's made that position his own. Ethan Laird is injured at the moment.
He's on his way back, though.
He's on his way back. Yeah. Good news on Ethan Laird. He signed a new contract as well. I personally was quite happy about that.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
But for me, Taylor Gardner-Hickman takes that right spot. Gives us something different as well, and he's been working really well there for me. Yeah,
there is a possibility it could be Alphonse Samsted because he was in the Iceland team, but he didn't get on the pitch, so obviously done a bit of training, but he's not injured. But I do think that Gardner-Hickman has really done well in that position. So I agree with you. I think he'll start as well. Yeah. So then, where do you want to go next?
So if we go in the two holding centre mids.
Now this is an interesting one because Paik definitely. I know he was away with South Korea, but he only got like 5 minutes, something like that. So if anything, the only thing he's going to be tired is from jet lag. So with Paik, definitely. Now, it depends. I'm not sure the state of Iwata's injury.
Same.
I'm going to sort of think that maybe he's not going to be quite ready for this game, and I'm going to go for Leonard.
Yeah. But I think if Iwata's fit, it's Iwata.
Yeah, me too.
If Iwata's injured, quite happily and comfortably, Mark Leonard takes that space because he played against Shrewsbury, Mark Leonard, and again, really good game. Me and you are huge fans of Mark Leonard, aren't we, Dad? What a beautiful and brilliant problem we have. Like the fact that Iwata's injured and Mark Leonard has to come and take his place. It's just amazing. So for me, Iwata, if he's fit, Leonard can fill that space if he's injured.
Yeah, so as I say, we'll find out on Saturday because we don't know whether he's nursing an injury or whether he's going to be okay. He did say it was a knock on the foot. I mean, Chris Davies suggested it wasn't anything too serious, but it might be a game. Because don't forget, we got a game on Tuesday as well against Bolton. So I'm going to go Paik and Leonard, but possibly Iwata if he's.
So before we go into the attacking mids, Dad, let's just get this one out and confirm it. Forward's going to be Stansfield because that's a nice, easy one to tick off.
Yeah. So we'll do left wing first. So do you want to start off with that one?
So in my mind, this is a toss up between Hansen and Keshi Anderson, and because let me talk about my feelings across the whole line because it explains why I've picked those two for left. So and then you can come in, Dad, on the line after me. So I think Hansen or Keshi Anderson on the left. I think he's going to start Williamson in the middle, and I think he's going to give Scott Wright his first chance out on the right, and that's why I've said Keshi Anderson may be in for the Hansen role, and then Alfie May will be on the bench because we spoke recently, Dad, in a previous podcast.
Do you know what? We haven't spoken about this at all, and that is the gospel truth. That's exactly what I've picked.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've gone for. I wasn't sure about Anderson. I've actually plumped for Hansen, but I've got Anderson in my mind as well.
I agree with Hansen, though.
But I agree with you. I think Wright deserves his spot. I think he's come on. He's made impact in every game he's come on. He deserves a starting spot, so he's got to go on the right.
Yep.
Which means that Williamson will play in the number 10
Yep.
and Stansfield up front. That means Alfie May has to be on the bench.
Yep.
Which, when you think Alfie May on the bench, you think he's ridiculous. It just shows you the options we've got now is absolutely crazy. So it's really weird that you've chosen that, because I was going to surprise you with that.
But I thought to myself, instead of going left, mid, or right, it makes more sense to talk about the whole line, because then it involves the Alfie May scenario, why I'd pick Scott Wright. So we're agreeing then, for the interest of this video, let's say Hansen on the left, Williamson in the middle, and Scott Wright out on the right, feeding into Stansfield.
I think we need a bit of physical presence like Williamson at number 10 as well, because, I mean, you mentioned that centre-half they've got there, the big centre-half that they've got, and Williamson will give you a bit of a physical battle. I did think, well, Alfie May on the bench, people think, well, you can't really drop Alfie May, but actually it's about the team and the formation and the best mix to obviously beat the opposition, and that's the way it could be. The only other option it could be, if he wants to rest, because obviously there was Stansfield took a little bit of a knock in training for the under-21s, I'd heard. So if he's not fully fit, then it will be May in that position up front on his own.
Oh no! What a problem to have. Oh, Stansfield out for Alfie May. My heart is broken.
It just gives us those choices. I think we pretty much agree. It's really interesting, that you actually said that, because I've got exactly along the same line. I think if we're thinking it independently, I wonder if a lot of Blues fans are actually thinking the same thing. So let us know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about, particularly about Scott Wright. Does he deserve his place in the starting lineup?
The only thing I'd say about my selection, Dad, Scott Wright definitely, Williamson definitely, in my opinion. Hansen and Keshi Anderson, for me, is going to depend on whether Chris Davies thinks we're going to have a physical battle. I think if he thinks that we're in for a big physical game with physical players, he might start with Keshi Anderson, because he does give you that outlet. He's got that little bit more stockiness, hasn't he? But for me, personally, I think Hansen is the better left.
Can I throw one more thing into the mix?
Please do.
Well, think about this as well. What about Stansfield on the left? Because that's where we played against when we played Fulham and he scored that goal. He was on the left for them. You could have him on the left, Williamson as number 10, Scott Wright on the right, and Alfie May up top.
Yeah, people have spoke about this, playing Stansfield on the left or the right of the midfield. But I think it's proven with the heat maps, and it's proven with the time that Stansfield has had on the pitch. Chris Davies wants Stansfield as that leading man.
I agree. I was just throwing a bit of an option in there.
And I think it's a perfectly reasonable question that's on the minds of a lot of Blues fans. If Alfie May was to go up top as a number 9, he's a goal scorer. He doesn't work in the midfield for me, Alfie May. And
this is going to sound a bit controversial, what I'm about to say, but I think the team always looks better with either Stansfield or either May in the team and not together.
I agree.
Because
apart from the Wrexham game, it worked against Wrexham.
It did.
Apart from that game, I agree that it looks clunky.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, I'm sure Chris Davies would want them both in the team. But you've got to find a way. We did a video, didn't we, on that, which went out last week on that. So if you haven't looked at that, go and check out the channel. We've discussed Alfie May and Stansfield. Just very quickly there, mate. Just go through your bench. Just name them. But who's on your bench?
Peacock, Farrell, Samstead, Dykes, Sanderson, Leonard, Keshi Anderson, Alfie May.
Is that 7?
That's 7.
I lost count. Okay. Yeah. I've got Mayo, Samstead, Sanderson, Awata, Anderson, Dykes and May.
Very similar, but I think we've swapped because of injuries.
And of course everybody is dependent upon on injuries. So just to finish on then your score prediction.
So if you'd have watched our score prediction video from yesterday, you'd have got this ahead of time. But I'm going to go for Birmingham City 2, Lincoln City 1.
Yeah, and I've gone slightly different. I've gone for Lincoln City 1, Birmingham City 2. Once again we actually got this. We predicted the same score outcome. So you know what? Any victory will be brilliant. We've both gone for 2-1. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough game as well. That is an easy 2-1. That's a well fought 2-1 at Lincoln. But as always, Birmingham City supporters, we would love to hear from you. What do you think about some of the feedback we've given on the Lincoln team? Maybe about the lineup the Blues are going to start. What are your thoughts? Because there's some points of contention there that me and Dad spoke about. Maybe in the midfield, at the centre back, left and right. Please let us know your thoughts and drop us a comment in the section below. We love reading those and getting around to those as soon as we possibly can. Maybe you're a Lincoln supporter and you've stumbled across this video subscribing our channel for the first time. What are your thoughts? Are you expecting a difficult game this weekend? Did we get some of the analysis right? Is there some things we missed? Please let us know in the comment section below as well. And if you like this video specifically, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And we also have social media channels, so please check us out over there. We have an X page, we have an Instagram page, and you can also check us out on Spotify now as well. And if you haven't already, please don't forget to press that big red subscribe button so you don't miss any future content all about Birmingham City. And myself and Dad will see you on the next video.